Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I missed my 8 o'clock today. Somebody from the property board just grabbed me and had some questions and wanted to add a few things to this project. So, a couple minutes late start today, but I am Nick Slavic. I'm the proprietor of the Nick Slavic Painting and Restoration Company. I'm also the host of this show, Ask a Painter Live on Facebook. Every Friday morning, I come to you through Facebook Live. You ask me any questions you want: painting, restoration, wood finishing, furniture, cabinets, color choice, entrepreneurship, running a business, and all the things that come with it, and I answer them live using my over 2 decades of painting experience. So today we are going to be talking about paint shine. Also, this beautiful 1920s church behind me is a good example of some things that I'll talk about with paint shine, and also I'll describe a little bit of the stuff I've done on here. These are kind of fun projects, all the ecclesiastical work that I do. So Rob Grant from New Brunswick, Canada, actually suggested this topic 2 weeks ago, that I talk about paint shine, and then later on where to use certain shines of paint and how it all works. And Rob, for that, he's a pro painter, like I said, out of New Brunswick, Canada. You'll be getting one of my handmade mugs there. So thank you for your topics. If anyone else has any topic suggestions, if you'd like me to expound on something, do a small treatise on something paint related, restoration, furniture, let me know, and I will comb the depths of my experience for you and try to present it in the most logical way possible. Also, all these videos are archived on my Facebook page, my personal Facebook page, Nick Slavic, and they're also all archived on my channel on YouTube. So if you're ever looking up or curious about a paint project, I have them archived there. This is, I believe, my 20th one, so we've covered a lot of topics over the past. Especially the cabinet painting one. That was a very popular one, and we will go into other phases of that in the future as well. Questions, folks. I work best on my toes, off my feet, in front of people asking questions, so ask any questions, no matter how simple, how embarrassing, how whatever. If it is embarrassing, just say a friend. You're asking that for a friend. Just interject them anytime during this live feed. You can send any of your questions to me through Facebook Messenger or any other form of social media that you can get a hold of me on, and I will take care of those here. I will cover my topic today, which is paint shine, and my sort of mini restoration project here at the church, and then I will go over some of the questions here in the feed. So, first of all, I should mention also too, on this live screen, for those of you who are watching, there is a button you can click to follow me, so every time I go live, you will get a notification instead of having to dig through my personal feed and try to find something. So, we're going to go over some definitions first today, so we're all on the same page here. There's a lot of words used to describe paint shine, and we will get into the specific, flat, eggshell, satin, semi-gloss, all that stuff later. That's a whole nother quandary that we can wander into. But people talk about shine, people talk about sheen, and people talk about gloss. In certain circles, these terms actually mean something. Most of the time, when I talk to my homeowners, they say, well, what sheen of paint, what shine of paint do you use? And then I describe what the manufacturers describe their paint as. Then we talk about flat, eggshell, whatever. But there are some technical terms, dictionary terms as well. Sheen is technically a soft luster on a surface, so it more describes the actual shine than just describing the actual thing of the shine itself. Shine is actually the quality of brightness of the reflected light off the surface, and gloss is a shine, a high shine, or a luster on a smooth surface. So the dictionary terms wander in and out. They sort of describe certain things, but basically there are two terms that we will use, and that the Master Painters Institute uses, and most professionals uses, and paint scientists use when they discuss that: sheen and gloss. Sheen is a little bit awkward word. I tend to use shine more interchangeably, but sheen is basically, if you have a wall here and you look down at an 85-degree angle, 90 would be perfectly flat like this. 85 would be coming 5 degrees out from the wall. If you look down the wall that way, whatever you describe that wall is, that is a description of sheen. Shine is when you're looking perpendicular at a wall, so a flat wall right in front of you, you're staring at perfectly 90 degrees at the wall. That is how they describe gloss. So sheen, looking sideways; gloss, looking straight at. And basically all the, when we talk about how dull or how shiny a paint is. It's basically, color is light, and light is reflected off certain things. When we talk about a very glossy surface, imagine a beam of light hitting a mirror, and then that beam of light shooting off in a single pattern reflected in an angle. That's a very glossy surface. A very flat surface is when light is diffused. So a beam of light hits a wall, and it's diffused into the atmosphere. That's flatter paint. Specular reflection, that's the actual scientific term. Specular reflection is the term for glossiness, where the beam comes down, the beam comes out in a single pattern. Diffuse reflection is when the light source comes down and then it gets diffused in there. So, image of this, you can see highlighted in pink. This is specular reflection. When you have a beam of light coming down, hits a glossy surface, beams back out. Diffused is when your beam of light comes down and then gets reflected into the atmosphere. And I'll tell you why that's important, not only for pro painters, but for homeowners as well. And this goes into a lot of, I've expounded a lot on new construction and the builder's flat finishes they uses, and a lot of this has to do with that. I will describe that a little bit later. So basically, now that we sort of are on the same wavelength as far as that goes, I will talk about paint. There's 4 basic ingredients in paint, and we will focus on 2 of those today. But the main 4 are the vehicle, which is actually, is it an oil paint? Is it a water-based paint? What is the actual liquid in the can? There's the binder or the resin. This is the good stuff in the can, the expensive stuff, the titanium dioxide. Think of it as basically glue. There's the pigment, which is the color, and then there is additives to make your paint do certain things. So, like I said, vehicle is either the oil or water. The binder, it gives the paint durability, and again, the binder can either be oil-based or water-based as well. Pigments are divided into 2 categories, organic and inorganic colorants. Organic colorants are not durable. Think about very bright blue, very bright yellow, pastel colors, jewel tones, things like that. Inorganic colorants, if you think about iron oxide, if you think about some black, some whites, things like that, more earthy tones, those are inorganic colorants, and those are more fade resistant. Titanium dioxide being one of the main white pigments that makes up paint. So the level of this titanium dioxide in paint determines the price of a paint and the quality of a paint as well. So when you think about very cheap builders flat white ceiling paint versus very high-end eggshell wall paint, one is $75 a gallon, one is $18 a gallon. Titanium dioxide is going to be the main determinant in the price of that gallon, along with some other additives and some research and things too. And then there's additives. People add additives, all sorts of additives to paint. It can be UV prohibitive coatings. It can be antifreeze, so that when the paint is shipped, it doesn't freeze in a truck overnight. Things to improve flow, open time, things to improve stability of the actual coating itself. Adhesion, as far as primers and things like that. Let's see what else they do. Oh, some of them add texture, some of add them to the flow, and biocides as well. So when we talk about, like a interior bathroom paint or a garage, a basement block wall paint, and they have some mildewcide in it, that would be a biocide to actually kill mildew. So those are additives. Now, out of those 4 things that go into paint, shine, in terms of shine, we're going to talk about 2 of those, binder and pigment. There is an actual scientific formula for figuring out the ratio of binder and pigment, and that will actually determine gloss. So the actual shine of a paint is determined by the ratio of this binder and this pigment. If you have a lot of pigment, not a lot of binder, you're going to have a very flat paint. If you have a lot of binder, which is the good stuff, and lesser amount of pigment, that pigment will be immersed in that binder, and you actually get a glossier paint. And here's an image for you guys. I know that it's transposed on here, but this upper one, imagine these black molecules are pigment molecules, and this grayer portion is the binder or the glue. This would be a flat paint up here. This would be a gloss. You can see here the pigment particles are actually showing through the glue and the binder up there, and the light is refracted off them in different ways. When there's a lot more binder or glue in this, and those pigment particles are immersed in it, it becomes a flatter surface, it levels off, and then you get more specular reflection like that. So if you think about a very flat paint, ceiling paint, flat wall paint, field marking paint, which is the flattest, and then maybe a gloss, a semi-gloss, something like this, this gives you an actual representation of what is in that paint like that. So now we get on to the actual shines of paint. There are more than 40 different descriptions of shines of paint. If you look at all the paint manufacturers out there, everything goes from flat, ultra flat, matte, low luster, velvet, eggshell, satin, semi-gloss, high gloss. All these are just descriptors. They're not scientific terms as far as that goes. They're only there to give you an indication of the general shine of a paint, at least compared to others. Like I said, there are over 40 different descriptors there. And the Master Paint Institute actually tested a whole bunch of these samples, whether it's white, whether it's flat, semi-gloss, water-based, alkyd, things like that. And in some of these things, if you take two eggshell paints, the biggest discrepancy they found is 20% different in shine between some of these paints. So they took two eggshell paints, they tested them the same way, they reflected light off there using a gloss meter, and two paints by two different manufacturers actually were 20% different in the rate of shine they are. So you have to, the descriptors just give you an idea. Unless you have a lot of knowledge of these products, sometimes it's hard to actually determine what shine it is. So some very high quality paints have a flat enamel or a flat. If they're of a very high quality, very high price, sometimes that has a tiny bit of shine to it. Other paints are dead flat, and they're builder's flat, and they're not washable or durable at all. So you sort of have to, you know, in the paint stores there are actual examples of the shine a lot of the times. What I found is that you know, they're sprayed on in a factory, and they're sprayed on in such a way that usually residential contractors wouldn't spray them on. It looks different, it feels different, the mill thickness is different. So it's a good general idea of what to do and what shine to pick, but it's not exact. When you take a can of semi-gloss and go home, it's going to look quite a bit different from whatever that sample is on there. Gloss meters. Gloss meter is an actual scientific tool that they use, like I mentioned, like the Master Painters Institute uses to measure that, and they rate all these coatings on a scale of 1 to 100. So, like I mentioned, with that 20% difference, there was some eggshell paints that rated as high as like a 25 on there, which would technically be you know, a satin, give or take, and then some as low as a 5, which would technically be a flat on their scale. So, a lot of discrepancy in the different paint shines there. More binder, more gloss, less binder, less gloss. That's sort of the general rule here. Scattered light. I'm just going through my notes here, making sure I didn't forget anything. So now that we basically know what the paint shines are, things like that, I will walk you through a couple of the major paint manufacturers' lines of interior paints and sort of describe where we use them, how we use them. With Benjamin Moore, their highest end interior paint is Aura. It comes anything from a flat to a semi-gloss. And again, like I mentioned before, Aura's flat is going to be of a much higher quality than you know, a big box store's, you know, paint for 18 bucks a gallon. What I've noticed, the shine is a tiny bit higher in these things, probably mostly due to you know, not a conscious effort, but more they're using higher quality pigments, higher quality binders, and that alone, a lot of the higher end brands, when they grind pigments, the actual grinding, the molecular structure of those pigments is actually smaller, so that will lead to a higher gloss paint, or at least a glossier paint. It allows that immersion, you know, of that glue and that pigment stuff to be immersed a little better, so you don't have those big craggy chunks of pigment in there like that. So like a Benjamin Moore Aura, it is technically 100% acrylic paint. They're flat, would be a great way to hide some wall flaws, things like that. I've heard of people using, you know, satin semi-gloss on trim. I've experimented with it a little before when there's very, very dark colors. Good paint, but it doesn't have the additives, and it has a different binder in it than like a trim enamel, which would be like their Advance or their Impervo, that dries rock hard. And because it dries a little bit harder, it's a tiny bit glossier. A glossier paint will be more durable. It'll have it's less prone to mechanical damage, which would be wear and tear, things like that, and it's less prone to fade as well. So that's why a lot of people use the glossier paints on trim. And you know, after I showed you that that description of the pigment molecules here, I mean, you can understand why a glossier paint would be better on trim. Those pigment molecules aren't exposed to U or mechanical abrasion, so it's more encompassed in there, and it's a little more durable. There's sealing paints. All manufacturers have a specific sealing paint. Those are either a flat or even lesser than that, a dead flat, or you know, they usually just label them flat. But a flat sealing paint is always going to be more flat than a standard flat wall paint. And then when you get into Advance or Impervo, things like that, what I've noticed is that if you take a satin Aura, which is Benjamin Moore's wall paint, and a satin Advance, the Advance will be much shinier. I mean, so noticeably shiny that I would almost describe some of these satin products, at least the Impervo and the Advance, almost as a semi-gloss. So when people ask for a gloss or a semi-gloss on their trim, I usually show them a sample of a satin Advance or a satin Impervo, and that's basically a semi-gloss, especially when you have, you know, a nice flat mirror-like surface underneath. You lay a couple coats of that on, it's nearly a semi-gloss. So huge discrepancy even within brands. And Benjamin Moore, you know, they would describe their Aura as a satin or an eggshell, and then the Advance as a satin. But even within the same brand, those satins are not the same. And especially anybody who's had experience with Impervo oil too, that's even, in my opinion, a tiny bit glossier than like the satin Advance. So with the Sherwin-Williams line, their top of the line interior paint is either Emerald or Duration. The biggest difference between those two that's been described to me is Duration is basically their sort of flagship, super durable, super long life, fade resistant. The Emerald is all that, but just a little more eco-friendly. Uses a different tint system, at least as it was described to me. So, to me, they're basically on par. One, again, with these additives, it just does something a little bit different. But in my opinion, they're about the same amount of durability. Now, what's interesting here is that Duration ranks very high for durability, but they do not actually carry a flat paint. They call it a matte. So, to me, it's a tiny bit shinier than a flat, and again, matte to me describes somewhere between a flat and an eggshell, and I believe they tout this durability. They actually make the paint a tiny bit shinier than a flat Aura. So I think that's what accounts for that, and that's where you start seeing, you know, some of these over 40 names interject into there. So basically, a Duration, a nice flat would be a good example of hiding some wall flaws. If you have a 100-year-old house with some beat up plaster, if you want to have the durability of maybe an eggshell but hide a lot of the flaws, some of these super high quality Aura and Duration paints in the lowest shine, either a flat or a matte, will actually do a little bit of both of those. My kind of go-to finish in all this stuff is whatever eggshell is to a company. Normally you have your flat offering, you have your eggshell, you have your satin, semi-gloss, and gloss. I like the eggshell. It's the first step up from flat. It seems to be this happy medium of, you know, you want to hide flaws. New drywall is almost disgusting to look at. There's so many flaws in it, and 10 years on, nail pops, tape cracks, all sorts of weird stuff comes out in that. So I like a happy medium between a flat and an eggshell. Eggshell to me is that sort of happy medium where there is you get the shine, you get the durability, this kind of low lustry matte finish. So when you walk by and your elbow touches it, it doesn't disturb the paint, but it also has a low enough shine where it'll hide a lot of the flaws in that. So to me, that's if you're looking for the best of both worlds, that's, as a pro, that's normally what I pick. Obviously, in my own house, I've experimented with just about everything, including semi-gloss wall paint, which is always interesting to work with, just to say that, you know, I can tell my customers about it. Interestingly enough, with these interior paints, there are some bath paints. Some Benjamin Moore has Aura Bath and Spa paint, which I actually experimented with in my bathroom, and the products like this start messing with shine and durability. They tout they have a biocide in them to help cut down on mildew. They have different resins in them to make them harder, but they also have a flattener to make them a tiny bit more dull. So you don't have to have a very high gloss paint in your bathroom in order to keep, you know, the water stains off and the hairspray off and things like that. And what I found is that that Aura Spawn bath paint is actually a very flat or matte paint, but I haven't had a lot of the you know, water stains, durability issues yet. So they can tweak those sort of 4 ingredients in the can to mess with those properties. Obviously, a paint like that would be a very poor trim paint. It probably doesn't have a lot of mechanical abrasion resistance, but I think perfect for what it does in a situation like that. Why is gloss, shine, sheen, why is all this important? Number one, these are some things that as pros and homeowners we know, and then I'll show you some things or describe some things that maybe you don't know about it. Hide. Number one, the flatter the paint, the better it hides. Obviously, because it's a rougher coating, it's a more coarse coating, it adheres to itself better, it adheres to the wall better, and it actually hides darker colors better. Durability. The higher gloss you go, the more durable your paint's going to be. The flatter, obviously, the less durable it's going to be. And we'll talk about that with exterior here in a little bit too. Touch-up. Pros, new construction is almost always built with dead flat builder's paint for a couple of reasons. Number one, like we said, light is reflected off a flat coating, and it hides all the flaws. It doesn't draw your eye to one particular thing. Also, it's easy to touch up. Again, when you put a brush coating on a wall that's already done, let's say a plumber nicks a wall, something like that, it touches up very easily. So that in new construction, that's a very common thing. Doing the final walkthrough, you're touching everything up. If you use a shinier paint, you have less chance of touching up well. Now, if you followed you know, the priming and the painting and all the technical data sheets, I found that it's not really an issue. But when guys try to get by with the least amount of effort and time and money they can in new construction, I find they use that dead builder's flat like that. Fade resistance. It is my opinion, and I actually talked to a paint scientist about this to see if my opinion was right, but it's always been my opinion that when I have a very dark color, like these doors right here on the outside of this church, and it has to be outside, it's always been my opinion that using a glossier paint or a shinier paint is more fade resistance. And based on the science that he pointed me to, obviously you can tell that if these pigment molecules are exposed to the UV, to the sun, to the rain, things like that, they're going to wear away quicker. If they are immersed in this high quality pigment or binder or glue, they're going to be encapsulated and they're going to have less chance to wear. So a lot of things I've been experiencing over the last 20 years, it's kind of nice to talk to an actual person who's done the science behind it and prove or disprove some of the things that I felt or not felt. So it's my go-to stuff outside is, you know, if I have a 100-year-old barn and they want it white, the boards are going to be really rough. There's going to be a lot of old paint. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on, and it's going to be white. I'll normally go with a flat paint only because white will never fade, and you know, it seems to hold up very well. And I don't think the extra glossiness of a satin paint would do much for the outside of a barn like that. But when you have a project like this, where you have a very, very dark color, and this is going to be touched many, many times. Even though this is on the north side, there's some other stuff on the south side of this farm, or this church that I did, that's going to be exposed directly to sun all day. So it's going to be very important to me that those pigment molecules are immersed in this, especially when you're dealing with a basically black paint outside, which is usually a nightmare as far as UV goes. So the only other odd thing which I've found in my research of shine is that scientifically speaking, and this is something that I've sort of had the inkling of over the years, but I haven't really seen it borne out as much as the durability issue, is that shinier colors are darker. In talking to this paint scientist and reading through some literature, it is actually true, but very, 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 very slightly true. The same color, if you take this very dark color and paint a flat paint and paint a high gloss paint, a very, very small amount, the glossier paint will be darker. Now, not enough that I would ever change the color. So if you're looking at a house If you're a homeowner, if you're a pro, if you're picking colors inside of a house, and the homeowner says, this is a good color, I just want it the slightest bit darker, can you maybe just step up a shine? Probably not going to work. It's such a minuscule difference between the colors that scientifically, sorry about the sirens, scientifically that is a true statement to say that a glossier color in the same color is darker, but not enough that almost anybody would notice. So if you're thinking about something, or if you have the discrepancy between an ultra flat ceiling paint white versus a high gloss oil trim enamel white, same company, same color, there will be a little bit of difference. Most of it has to do with the light reflected off of that stuff. If you guys have any other questions about paint shine or any other things like that, let me know. I'm going to take a second here and scroll through the questions. It'll be just a second. I got to go sideways here to get through. Yeah. Chris Shank, awesome illustration. Yeah, I had to simplify a bunch of that stuff from science that I found online to try to do that. So I'm hoping it came through here. Jose Aravello, colorant, depending on the paint company, does add sheen. I found this to be true. It's always been, the way I describe it to homeowners is that if you want your house painted white or you want your house painted black, there's a huge durability issue and you're going to have a slight shine difference as well. Now imagine, remember those four ingredients I described with the paint. Every time you add color to a paint to make it darker, like this stuff here, you're taking away some of that good titanium dioxide and you're adding colorant. Colorant makes paint bad. It's good for making color, it's bad for the durability, the fade resistance, color retention, all that stuff in paint. They're improving these slowly with next generation colorants and things, but when you take away the good stuff from a paint and add more of that stuff, and I've even found that the particular colorant of paint adds shine. In a project like this on this small church restoration, there's a whole bunch of old architectural millwork back there. I will even change the paint, depending on what I want it to do on different parts of the building. For the doors here, I use one paint that flows out a little better, but still, the highest quality paint I can, to get that durability in it. And I'll use a slightly glossier paint on the doors versus some other things. There's some very beat up wood that's over 100 years old on the back of this church. I use a low luster paint on that, and I'll switch it up even between brands. Even within Benjamin Moore's line of exterior paints, which I'm using here, one paint I find flows better, one paint I find is a better sort of architectural siding, millwork sort of paint like that. And again, the paint companies just mess with additives, sometimes on purpose, sometimes on not. You just have to have some experience with that sort of thing. So yeah, but if you ever look at the line of paint, usually in interior paints, there's somewhere between 3 and 4 bases, what they call bases. If you pick a very light color, the can will almost be full of paint. If you pick a very dark color, it's either called a neutral base or a deep base. If you open that can, there's an inch or two of paint, and sometimes in very deep colors, even more, taken out of the can. Now that's the good stuff. That's the titanium dioxide and the good binders and things like that. And then you add in pigment to make up for that. And that's where you sometimes get, a paint that's maybe a little stickier, a little softer, a little shinier, things like that. In almost no cases, I kind of echo what Jose says, that in almost no case is a paint made flatter by colorants in my experience. Scientifically it may be the case, but I've never found a paint to be flatter because of colorants. If anything, they're usually a tiny bit shinier. So again, scientifically that's a true statement that colorants probably make your paint a little shinier, but again, not enough to probably change your choice of colors. And I apologize guys, I got a sideways screen here, but all the comments are coming through up and down. What do you think about Gen X colorants and California paints? I kind of echo the same thing. I think there's more of a difference I notice between very light colors and dark colors versus different colorants from different manufacturers. What I found is that a lot of the colorants and the paints that are new, there's a big push towards environmental friendliness and not sort of durability, washability, abrasion resistance, things like that. So I think in the last 5 to 10 years, maybe 5 years to be more accurate, it seems to me like all the major improvements in paints have basically been to make them more earth friendly, and especially new colorant systems, things like that. Supposedly all the pigments are better, and they'll tout their improvements and stuff, but it's been my feeling that the paint hasn't, the quality of the paint has improved less than the environmental friendliness of the paint in the last couple of years. So yeah, so basically on a church project like this, when you have, for me, this is a perfect example of flat would hide a ton of the flaws in old doors, in old architectural millwork, and I'm always of two minds about it, whether you use a flat and make it look good from 10 feet away, or use a little bit higher shine. In this case, I used a low luster finish. To me, there's no question when you have a color this dark, you got to use something shiny. And especially, again, you have to, in the scales of justice, that when it tips one way or another, you got to pick the lesser of two evils. The shinier the paint, I could have used an ultra high gloss oil on the outside of these doors, but it's going to show a ton of brush strokes, a ton of the old character, and things like that. I lowered the shine a little bit, but made up for it by using the highest, best quality paint available on the market. So hopefully I've balanced that out with my knowledge of paint in order to make sure that these doors last a long time. And with that being said, though, with the deeper colors, it's going to attract more heat. Not on this side. This is the north side, but on the south side, it'll attract more heat over its life, and it will fade quicker than a white paint. So I always brief my customers about this, and they know that somewhere between 3 and 10 years, a refresher coat probably wouldn't hurt, especially on the south side of this stuff. So. Do you think, Jose asked, do you think Gen X holds up better against UV rays? I think that's a great question, Jose. I think a better question is, are you using the best quality exterior paint you can? I've never had a problem with fading on the interior paint. I know that's a great concern of a lot of my homeowners and different paint companies. When you look at Good Housekeeping, how they rate paints, and Consumer Reports when they rate paint, fade resistance on interior paint is something they take very seriously. To me, it's not an issue at all. I've never seen one of my paint jobs fade inside. Might just be that people repaint on a quicker interval than it fades. It might mean that it doesn't fade. I don't know. Not a concern for me, but outside, definitely a concern. I have not, I think a better question, years ago, with the rash of sort of hardy board houses being built, there was a lot of fading with new construction with paint jobs. A lot of paint companies came back and said, well, it's probably the alkalinity, the pH balance, the molecular structure, and the different chemicals in hardy board that's causing it to fail. But I've never had one of mine fail prematurely or fade prematurely. They all sort of weathered on a natural schedule, somewhere between 5 and 10 years, needing a refresher coat. So to me, again, humans are usually the error in the process, not the coatings and not the hardy board manufacturers. I think in that new construction, the painters were using very, very low quality builder's paint, and they were probably watering it down to spray. And on top of that, spraying one coat, and then on top of that, probably not back brushing or back rolling. So when there's a rash of this fading going on with new constructions with dark colors on hardy board, to me, saying that it's the alkalinity of the actual substrate itself and not all the humans who are doing weird stuff to it, very low percentage chance that hardy board is wrong, very high percentage chance that the painters are wrong. And I've sort of bore that out with what is the best, highest quality exterior paint you can get. You get the duration in a satin, you get the Benjamin Moore Aura in a low luster or a satin, and you do that, and I've not had one fade. So they can say alkalinity, they can say other stuff, but honestly, my concern is less the substrate, less the colorants, and I'm way more concerned with the quality of the paint. I think the pigments, the glues, the binders, the resins, and the higher quality pigments all together, and then put on correctly, also by the technical data sheets, I think that's what's going to be less fade resistant. So if anybody's concerned about fading, like when I say, if somebody wants a house this dark, I will tell them, if you're concerned about fading, there will not be another way to extend the paint life any farther, because I will prime underneath it. I will brush it all by hand. I'll put 2 coats on of a paint that's technically a 1 coat over an existing coating coverage. I will use the highest quality paint, and I will use a tiny bit of shine to it. There is not a way to make a paint last longer than that. Now, whether it's 3 years, whether it's 15 years, it's hard to say. It's based on exposure to sun and things, but that's as long as it's going to last. So that's what I kind of ensure my homeowners, that if there is another process out there that I could do to make that paint last longer, fade wise, I would do it. But that's it. So this is sort of your only choice. We could use a lesser paint, but the labor is still going to be the same, things like that. So I hope that helps you guys there. Thank you for all your questions. Send me any topic requests you have. Check out the YouTube page with all the archive stuff if you have questions. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. Click the follow button, and I appreciate all your input on this stuff. And we'll talk to you guys later.